Before stars were hung in the cradle of the void, before thought carved the first ripple into the blank sea of eternity, there was only the silence. And within that silence, there was one. From this ineffable singularity came division, creation and uncreation, light and shadow, order and chaos. And these were not opposites. They were mirrors in the mind of a being beyond being, an entity with no name, but one given by minds too feeble to perceive its wholeness. The Celestials called it the One Above All, the Source, the Hand, the Author. Its will bled outward as existence itself, yet even this perfect will had consequence. When TOAA's thoughts spun out the fabric of creation, imperfection stirred in the undercurrent, not a flaw, but an inevitability. From the act of being, the potential for unbeing was born. From love loomed hate, from harmony dissonance, and so the echo of creation, dark and eternal, gave form to the one below all. Not a mistake, but the necessary contrast to divinity. Was not created by TOAA. It is TOAA. The lowest layer of reality, the basement of the infinite multiverse, is the gutter where TOBA was chained, not merely imprisoned, but woven into the structural necessity of reality itself. A reflection of the supreme in a cracked mirror. Where TOAA is the author of meaning, TOBA is its cancellation. Where TOAA builds, TOBA breaks. And like fungus that grows beneath floorboards, it has waited for eons. Philosophy of the infinite, the split paradox. Among cosmic intelligences and abstract entities, it is whispered, if TOAA is all, then TOBA is a part of the all. If TOBA is a part, then it too is necessary. So why seal what is necessary? The living tribunal once debated this in the court of existence. The one below all is hate, it reasoned. But hate is not a glitch. It is an experience, a node in the tree of choice. TOBA is destruction, but TOAA is the gardener of both growth and decay. Eternity answered with stars in its eyes. Decay is a part of the cycle. But TOBA is not decay, it is cancellation. Not death, but the erasure of meaning. It is a will that seeks to unmake the very possibility of existence. TOAA, distant as the breath of dreams, spoke only once. What I allow to rise, I may also allow to fall, but nothing falls beyond my reach. This statement, layered in paradox, echoed across dimensions. TOAA's existence is the ultimate contradiction, omnipotent yet allowing pain, omniscient yet birthing chaos. Why? Why would a being of limitless goodness create its own antithesis? Because to be truly omnipotent, one must allow all potentialities to exist, even those that oppose oneself. The great stirring. Now, something has changed. A ripple tore through the basement of reality. In the realm beyond the green doors, TOBA stirred. TOBA had waited patiently as gamma mutations spread across the multiverse, portals of its will etched into mortal flesh. Hulk, leader, banner, just toys, vessels, windows, antennas. And now, a fissure cracked in the primordial foundation, the veil separating the bottommost void from the higher planes. Through this rent, TOBA surged, not as a creeping presence, but as a deluge of negation. Gods fell silent, realities wept, galaxies blinked out not by death, but by nullification, as though they'd never been. In this moment of total encroachment, where the fundamental syntax of existence was beginning to unravel, TOAA descended, not as a voice, not as a form, but as a question. Why do you do this? The conversation that bends infinity. TOBA did not speak in words. Its voice was the absence of meaning. It bled into minds, stripping logic like flesh from bone, because you created me as a lie. TOAA's presence rippled through dimensions, like golden light rebuking the night. I created you as truth, the truth of contrast. You are my shadow. No, came the answer from the void. I am your error. I am the part of you that hates itself, that regrets creation. TOAA shimmered in infinite paradox. I regret nothing. You are not a mistake. You are the necessary resistance, the fire beneath the forge. Then burn with me. TOBA surged upward, reality screaming as it tore. Realms collapsed into inverse reflections. Abstracts like love, hope, and logic withered into static. The multiverse's foundations cried out not in pain, but in confusion, as if they could no longer remember their purpose. TOAA's silence. And yet TOAA remained still, the cosmic audience. Eternity, infinity, death, oblivion, and even the Beyonders watched as their supreme progenitor stood unmoved, as the very fundament buckled. TOBA's rage was not fire, but void light, the cold plasma of anti-existence. It demanded war. It demanded TOAA meet it not as an idea, but in full presence. And in that timeless instant, TOAA answered, not in judgment, not in wrath, but in will. The final place. There exists a realm beyond all multiverses, outside all frameworks. The final place, a canvas of pure intention. Here TOAA and TOBA manifest fully, not through avatars or filtered emanations, but as their truest natures in this sacred realm. Meaning and anti-meaning clash. Logic and anti-logic fold into each other. This is not a battle of strength. It is the resolution of the divine dichotomy. One will stand not because it is stronger, but because it is necessary. Because in the end, creation must justify itself, and destruction, it must answer for why it ever thought it could win. The final place was not a battlefield, yet everything that had ever bled, burned, or begged for purpose now echoed in its silence. No stars spun here, no time moved, no equations ruled its harmony. It was not even a void, for even the void implies absence. This was something else, the origin of all ideas, the still point from which the storm of reality first unfurled. And now, in this hallowed nowhere, two forces emerged, not as gods, but as absolutes. The one below all arrived as corrosion. Incarnate. It had no body, but its form could be seen if one dared to gaze deeply into despair. Its presence collapsed light, not into darkness, but into forgetting. Eyes that observed it would not see shadow. They would simply lose the memory of light. It was pure cancellation. Where it passed, laws broke not from violation, but from irrelevance. Gravity ceased not because it failed, but because falling no longer made sense. Concepts flinched and recoiled from it, like children fleeing a parent's unspoken rage. The one below all was not evil in the cartoonish sense of demons and flames. It was a deeper nihilism, the hatred of existence itself, a will that declared nothing should have been. And then came the answer. The one above all did not descend. It simply was, and in being all things aligned. No blinding light, no trumpets, no grandeur, just a presence that made everything else remember itself. Universes reignited like neurons awakening from anesthesia. Forgotten ideas stirred, the outlines of being reformed around it. Where TOBA unraveled reality like a discarded thread, TOAA rewove it with presence alone. Its nature was not fire or fury. It was intention. It was the reason every question ever asked had a meaning, the reason stories could end in triumph or tragedy. TOAA was not goodness, nor order, nor light. It was the possibility of those things, and more. It was the space in which meaning could exist at all. And in this impossible place, the two faced each other, not as beings, but as truths. The one below all moved first, not by striking, but by speaking, and even this act was violence. Not speech, but cancellation. A wave of unbeing emanated from it, not with sound, but with raw negation. Where it passed, structure bled into gibberish. Planets, memories, gods all flickered out of relevance. Every law, every form of causality and perception cracked like old glass. It reached for TOAA, not to destroy, but to unwrite. You are a lie, TOBA thundered, voice woven from broken syntax and disassembled grammar. You pretend to be purpose, but all you've done is scatter entropy and pain across endless reflections. You give hope to mortals only to bury them. You say, love exists, and yet you invented death. TOAA did not raise a hand. It simply remained. A moment passed, a moment that lasted forever and not at all. And TOA answered, I am the silence that allows a song to matter. This phrase echoed through the layers of being like a chord that corrected broken strings. Where TOBA's words stripped meaning, TOAA's restored it, not by force but by allowance. TOAA's will did not crush TOBA's, it absorbed it, contextualized it. Like a parent who listens to a child's rage without rebuttal, TOAA absorbed the hatred and did not return it. TOBA recoiled, not in fear, but in disorientation. It had expected resistance, war, even obliteration. But TOAA offered something far worse to TOBA's essence: understanding. You gave them hope and left them to suffer. You watched as they burned and called it free will, TOBA hissed. Its shape churned with spikes of negation, its tendrils ripping through abstract forms. Love, logic, causality, all screamed under the weight of TOBA's contempt. Yes, TOAA said, because love must choose, because logic must question, because creation must risk. The words did not merely speak, they defined. And in that moment, TOAA expanded. Not in size, but in clarity. Every moment of sacrifice across the multiverse, every act of defiance in the face of pain, every poem written by a dying hand, all bloomed like stars around TOAA. Each one a rebuttal, not to TOBA's power, but to its belief. It had power. But it had no justification. TOBA screamed. The scream shattered languages that hadn't yet been spoken. It wrapped itself in annihilation and threw itself at TOAA with all its fury, not with energy, but with contradiction. It called forth. Everything broken, every child left hungry, every murdered hope. It was the sum total of all that should not be, and still TOAA remained. Not unaffected, not unscarred, but unmoved in purpose. You are necessary, TOAA said, but you are not final. TOBA struck. It struck not once, but infinitely. Each attack a metaphysical thesis that life is meaningless, that sentience is a cruel joke, that suffering is the only true language of the cosmos. It invoked the Holocaust, the obliteration of worlds, the voids where entire realities collapsed without ever having lived. And TOAA answered not with denial, but with counterpoints. TOAA opened within itself the memories of every universe where peace was forged, where love endured, where hope crawled out of ruin and chose to exist again. It showed TOBA the species who healed, the civilizations who remembered their dead, not with despair, but with songs. It showed TOBA that existence is not valuable because it avoids suffering, but because it redeems it. And then came the climax. TOBA surged forward with all its essence, a final attempt to overwrite the very concept of being. A wave of nothingness surged toward TOAA, a tsunami of philosophical annihilation. And TOAA did the unthinkable. It stepped aside, not because it was afraid, not because it couldn't stop it, but because it knew TOBA must express itself fully. To be contained, TOAA allowed the wave to pass, and in its wake nothing was erased, because TOAA had already integrated TOBA's essence into the whole. You are not my enemy, TOAA said. You are my shadow, and I do not fight my shadow, I illuminate it. In that final moment, TOBA saw itself, not as a rebel or rival, but as a part of the whole, given shape by contrast. Its screams faltered, its claws crumbled into ash, not because it was defeated, but because it had no more to say. The final place quieted. TOBA collapsed, not into destruction, but into reconciliation. It did not cease to be. But it ceased to struggle, because even hate, once truly understood, has no power, and TOAA, still and unchanging, did not celebrate. It simply remained, the victor not by strength, but by necessity, because in the end, existence did not prove itself with power, but with meaning, and the one above all is, was, and will always be the meaning.